Um, when I decided to study visual arts in 1995, so you can figure out how old I am. The only place, I was the first person in my family to go to university. It wasn't even a possibility, even a thought. So when I decided to forsake microbiology 2 weeks before I was supposed to begin for visual arts, there wasn't any funding, there wasn't any opportunity of funding, and the only place that I could possibly go to was the University of Durban-Westville. Okay, not UKZN, the University of Durban-Westville. I say that because at that point, the University of Durban-Westville had many different Africanized programs. Okay, so when I studied visual arts, or fine art as it was called, and the departments were jointly done with art history, I was learning about Osama bin Laden in my second year and how the CIA was funding him in terms of my class on Orientalism in '96. I was learning about African art and Indian art and Western art on par. We had courses about postmodernism and black feminism and feminism all together. And for me that was par course, because I had a teacher who had been schooled in that system, so my high school teacher taught me in that way. So I thought that's how art history is taught. Until I came to Wits. And the shock, and so I earned a MA in fine arts and one in racism at Wits. So for me what was so difficult was having come from that system and knowing that that wasn't an alternative, but that was the way it could be taught. And being faced with this limited Western art canon, the kind of geo-specific localities of one little culture in the world that then becomes the reference point for all your being, was odd. Okay, so when you're sitting here and you're asking me what can be done, it's been done. Sometimes we just have to look under the car and to see the wheel. So these systems and programs have been done, but they've also been undone.
Yes.
Okay? When the amalgamation happened, lots of these programs, like in the philosophy department and stuff, was lost. When I did first year philosophy and I sucked at it, because I bunked classes, we did Greek philosophy, we did Indian philosophy, we did African philosophy. There wasn't a question of whether Africans had philosophy, or whether Indians had philosophy, and could it be compatible with the teaching of Western philosophy. Just the basis of the stupidity of that kind of reasoning says why we're stuck in the foundations that we are right now. Okay? So we need to reclaim these spaces. These spaces are our spaces. They do not belong to a particular entity. They might have been exclusive spaces at one time. So we must have, so part of our project has to be about reclaiming them. How do we reclaim them? We have to become involved in them. Not see ourselves as powerless entities, but as the powerful entities that we are. The student protest last year showed the power of those collective action, of when individual gets together and agree on some larger project, that project becomes possible. So as much as it's important to have alternatives, it's important to have safe spaces where we can talk about our stuff, because and here's the thing, you know, when people say we've made it personal, between us, between Tembi and all of us, we've had arguments about how to position things. But it's not splashed in a newspaper and said that we are racializing and making this a gender issue. Because we understand that it's important with the stunted development of art history in this country that we have these discussions. We don't always agree on the end result or the ways to get there. But that is what the diversity of discourse is. Okay? So it also requires that everybody get involved. White persons who are in positions of authority cannot look away, cannot continue to look away. And that's what they've done. When they've seen what these black students went through, when we went to them and complained about the stuff we went through, they never took it any further. They put you to another colleague. They hushed up the situation, which is why Sarah Ahmed calling for an archive of abuse is important. That we start talking about it and refuse to be silenced as if it's our individual problem, when it has become a systemic problem of abuse that many have turned their eyes against, that have silenced our voices, that have hushed up things. So that needs to stop. So, and we need to put pressure on the institutions that we want. I teach decolonialist thesis, I teach black feminist creative methodologies, and the students respond incredibly to these courses. When I teach Western art history, I teach it in the context of its geo-specific localities, but also it's in its constant imaginations of otherness, in whatever way those otherness are structured, and how blackness has come into the imagination of whiteness and is integral both to their formation and to our formation. But already a body of students has gone through this kind of scholarship. And this year, when in lieu of somebody, a young white scholar was brought in, a postgrad scholar who had been schooled in this kind of Western canon, was brought in to do a course quickly, the students were upset. They complained bitterly in terms of how can you have given us over the last 2 years that kind of decolonial schooling and now put us with a course that says Western printmaking. We want more. Our students, white, black, Indian, colored, want to be involved in international conversations. They want to add to those conversations. They have strength in their voices and in their intellect, and they want to be involved. Our duties as people involved in knowledge production and knowledge dissemination is to give them the language and the decolonial schooling that is needed to engage internationally and locally and produce new knowledge. What that means is that we have to de-school. Just because we are people of color in black bodies does not mean that we automatically know blackness, or that we automatically know decolonial paradigms, or that we know anti-racist or anti-sexist or anti-homophobic work. This is the kind of schooling that we all need to go through, and it is continuous schooling. Just because I did a course 2 years or read something 2 years ago does not mean it's still relevant now. Yeah. So it's continuous schooling, it takes effort, it's draining. It's not easy, and this is the point when somebody says what we are doing. Sometimes, especially in a university setting where you're up against the mini-me's, it's the kind of academic fatigue you suffer, because every student of color is looking to you, coming to you confidentially. These white supervisors talk about how they got students to their system. Tell me about some of the students that are of yours that I helped get through the system in confidentiality. But also because they are not willing sometimes to even acknowledge the kind of valid paradigms that are. So at Wits, I was not even allowed to talk about black feminism because it's not a valid paradigm. Might have been for the last 30 to 50 years internationally, but still not at the School of Arts. Okay? So we're not talking just about changing bodies. We're talking about deschooling, and everybody has to be deschooled and decolonized in that kind of deschooling. And it is active, processual work. It is tiring work. I want to say to the young people, because there are quite a lot of young people, they strengthen your voices, they strengthen your experiences. I started writing, and I'm not a writer. All I ever wanted to be an artist, and some days I seem further from it than I was when I started. But somehow, the reason I started writing was because when I looked at the books by Sue Williamson and the like, I didn't see myself. They kept saying that there were no Indian artists, but here I am sitting in UDW, and all the people studying with me are Indian and black. But there's no Indian artists, there's no black artists, there's no colored artists spoken outside the township paradigm. So in order, I had to start writing to locate myself and to locate my realities. It wasn't great writing, it wasn't finessed writing, but it was writing. And it contributes, and 10 years, 15 years on, it's become part of the scholarship of South African art, and even though I dread reading that stuff again, it's become important. So trust in the kind of work that needs to be done in terms of what you have to offer, the realities that you have to offer, and the bodies of scholarship and experiences that are relevant and that are still needed. You don't need a degree to do that. Thank God you have that university. So the last thing I want to just say is that, you know, people keep talking about, you know, we need to decolonize institutions. We need to, my colleagues will say, yeah, we need to decolonize institutions. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's your class. What institutions? Who are the institutions? There isn't, in South Africa, in art history, in visual arts, there's not somebody who's monitoring in the way that they do in the UK or in the US, where you need to account for the number of people who come to your classes, where you need to account for the kinds of things you are teaching, where there's this constant big brother surveillance of knowledge and how relevant it is to bringing money in. We have the luxury of determining what we teach in our classes, hopefully, without somebody else determining that. So why don't you? Why don't you decolonize the institution? Because you have the power, each one of you. Sometimes you're just too damn lazy, and sometimes you haven't been educated and you have to go and re-educate yourself. Whatever it is, the work has to be done. Let's just get on with it.
Okay, so the weeks leading up to and the minutes leading up to this event promised an air of provocativeness, kind of tension, that a polemic was being staged. But as I think all of the panelists have reminded us, these are not new issues. Union for Daddy celebrates its 10th anniversary this year. It's become quite sentimental. And definitely these issues don't go away. But I think somehow since October last year, especially for WITS, slightly longer for other universities, much longer for some, the moment of some kind of give seems to be appearing. So these arguments, while not new, seem to take on a kind of potency that many of us who weren't kind of here in the 80s or the 90s doing the work that you guys were doing seem to be very new. And maybe that newness can lead to some kind of transformation, decolonization of institutions and beyond. But I think we're going to bring the evening to a close. The discussion will carry on in different forms. Thank you to Black Mark. Thank you to the panelists. Walter, do you want to?
I just wanted to say that we're going to open up the bar and people to join us. Please do challenge Black Mark. Please do speak to us back. We are in conversation, and we are, as Sam was saying, it's not just a meeting, it's a revolution. So let's try and decolonize as Simlikiwe is challenging us to do. All right.